Here's a question. Who's the leader of the conservative movement in the United States, or the Republican Party? What does that movement and that party stand for? Well, the answer to those questions used to be pretty obvious, quite simple, really. From the moment Donald Trump won the New Hampshire Republican primary 7 years ago, he was the leader of the American conservative movement and the Republican Party, and that movement and party stood for whatever he said it did. But now, after a disastrous 4 years in the White House, a series of bruising losses for his party, Trump is, politically speaking, the weakest he's ever been. His floundering presidential campaign has left a power vacuum within the Republican Party. And a flood of conservatives have rushed in to fill it, each claiming they should be the next face of the movement. All the different factions of the party are now openly brawling with each other in a battle royale playing out in Washington and in the shadow Republican 2024 primary. Earlier this week, Donald Trump took a typically bombastic shot at a potential rival, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. In a series of posts to his knockoff Twitter platform, Trump shared a photo purportedly depicting DeSantis, then a high school teacher, seemingly attended a party with a group of female high school students. In the post, Trump spread claims, without evidence, that DeSantis groomed his students, which is to say, attempted to lay the groundwork to later sexually abuse them. That's the claim that's being made. NBC News has not verified the photo in question. DeSantis has not commented on it. We reached out to DeSantis' office, have not heard back. Obviously, Donald Trump's a pathological liar with a long history of smearing his opponents with false allegations. I have to say, there is some irony here, as we have covered on the show. Some forces on the political right have become increasingly brazen about baselessly smearing their opponents on the left as child abusers and groomers. These ugly smears, which have no place in our political system, are often directed at members of the LGBT community, but by no means exclusively. In fact, last year, DeSantis' then press secretary, Christina Pushaw, tweeted in support of his controversial bill banning discussion of gender identity and sexuality in Florida classrooms by saying the bill that liberals inaccurately call Don't Say Gay would be more accurately described as an anti-grooming bill. And, quote, if you're against the anti-grooming bill, you are probably a groomer, or at least you don't denounce the grooming of 4 to 8-year-old children. Those attacks were coming from DeSantis' own press secretary in support of legislation DeSantis himself championed. Now, that legislation was predicated on the idea that simply discussing banal facts about identity is tantamount to child abuse. But Ron DeSantis, well, he messed around and found out. He's now getting a taste of his own medicine. The Florida governor's low-energy response to getting smeared demonstrates just how unwilling some Republicans still are to challenge Trump directly.
I spend my time delivering results for the people of Florida and fighting against Joe Biden. That's how I spend my time. I don't spend my time trying to smear other Republicans.
So Donald Trump posts something on his knockoff platform saying Ron DeSantis is sexually grooming underage girls. Ron DeSantis says, I don't spend my time smearing other Republicans. We're early, okay? This is just the beginning of a very long primary season. Now, elsewhere in the Republican field, other likely candidates are also beefing. Former Trump Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and former Trump UN Ambassador Nikki Haley are both taking public shots at one another as they vie for the Trumpism without Trump lane in next year's primaries. The chaos extends well beyond the presidential primary. In the House, of course, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who barely won that title at all after his members of his conference revolted, can barely keep his own party in line. Heck, he couldn't even prevent his MAGA troll caucus from openly heckling the President of the United States during Tuesday's State of the Union address. Meanwhile, one of the most infamous members of McCarthy's House, in fact, we have to say the most infamous, New York Republican Congressman George Santos, has inspired a mutiny within the party. Republican Senator Mitt Romney saying publicly he does not think the ethically and factually challenged freshman should be representing the Republican Party in Congress. Yesterday, House Democrats filed a resolution to expel Santos, which, and this is important, New York Republican Congressman Mark Molinaro told a reporter he supports. Now, this kind of fractious infighting, very public, is sort of the kind of behavior you expect in the House, particularly after that week of speaker votes. But in the Senate, the infighting is out in the open in a way I really have never seen before. Earlier this month, you'll remember, Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell unceremoniously booted 2 Republicans, Florida's Rick Scott and Utah's Mike Lee, off the prestigious Commerce Committee. Apparently, it was an act of Retaliation after Scott challenged McConnell for the leadership spot, and Lee supported him. And Senator Scott doesn't seem happy.
How's your relationship with Senator Mitch McConnell?
I work with all the Republican senators. I work with some of the Democrat senators. I'm going to work hard to represent my state. And I tell everybody, I'm going to represent the state of Florida. That's what I got elected to do. I mean, look, you can vote any way you want. I'm going to vote for the citizens of Florida.
But are you guys cool with each other? Are you talking?
Well, he just kicked me off a committee. I mean, so that was pretty petty.
Now, try not to be distracted by Rick Scott's incredible amounts of charisma. This feud between Senator Scott and Leader McConnell extends all the way back to March of last year. That was when Scott issued the Plan to Rescue America, which included the now famous proposals to sunset all federal legislation, including Social Security and Medicare, in 5 years. McConnell was furious with Scott and made no secret of what he thought about the plan Scott had proposed.
If we're fortunate enough to have the majority next year, I'll be the majority leader. I'll decide in consultation with my members what to put on the floor. We will not have as part of our agenda a bill that raises taxes on half of the American people and sunsets Social Security and Medicare within 5 years. That will not be part of a Republican Senate majority agenda.
Yeah, that's Mitch McConnell. That's not Joe Biden in the State of the Union. That's Mitch McConnell at the press conference. And fun fact, Rick Scott also spoke at that press conference where McConnell declared his plan dead on arrival. Now, fast forward to the State of the Union this week, where President Joe Biden basically just repeated what Mitch McConnell said, calling out Scott's plan, using it to make Republicans say on live television that Medicare and Social Security are off the table for cuts. Now Rick Scott is trapped. No one from his party is coming to help him, because he basically handed Joe Biden and Democrats the perfect ammunition against Republicans. Scott's lame attempts to defend himself have also failed, including publishing a tweet that confirms he proposed exactly what Biden said. And now Joe Biden is just twisting the knife. At Biden's event yesterday in Tampa, Florida, Scott's home state, every seat in the audience had a brochure on it showing Rick Scott's plan. And today, when asked about Biden's speech, State of the Union speech, Leader McConnell made some remarks that for him are about as explicit and cutting as you can get.
Well, unfortunately, that was the Scott plan. That's not a Republican plan. That was the Rick Scott plan. There were no plans to raise taxes on half the American people or to sunset Medicare or Social Security. And it's just a bad idea. I think it will be a challenge for him to deal with this in his own reelection in Florida, a state with more elderly people than any other state in America.
A challenge to deal with in his own reelection in Florida. McConnell could have just not said anything. He could have said Joe Biden was lying or exaggerating. Instead, he called Rick Scott out by name, said it was a bad idea, and hung him out to dry. The core conflict here, when you take a step back, the reason you're seeing this, Trump and DeSantis and the House Republican caucus and now Scott and McConnell, they're all fighting each other, is that when it comes down to it, what do they stand for? Like, what do you want to do, guys? What's your deal? What's your agenda? Getting rid of the most significant social insurance programs of the 20th century is not popular, but it has been a shared goal for many people inside the conservative movement. But what they actually want the government to do for people is a question they do not have very good or particularly popular answers to. In fact, the only thing they do seem intent on making sure of is that their political enemies are punished. They've got an entire new subcommittee devoted to that part of the agenda. And one of the members of that subcommittee will join me right here in studio next.